Hello there, my fellow gamers. Imagine you have some cash laying around, like a lot of cash, and you want to spend it all on a gaming laptop. But not just any laptop, but literally the best money can buy with as little compromise as somehow possible. Well, then you have come to the right place, since right here in front of me I have the creme de la creme of 16-inch gaming laptops you can buy from almost all manufacturers right now. And I am not just talking about pure specs here, but every one of these puppies is stacked out with features, nifty little extras, gorgeous displays, well, for the most part, and pretty much everything else you could ask for if you're looking at burning something north of $3,000 to get the best, somewhat mobile gaming experience. I have been daily driving each and every one of these for at least a few weeks over the past couple of months, and while I will most likely not going to tell you which one is the best, since that is, as always, a very subjective and personal decision, I will let you know what I liked and what I didn't like about all of them, to give you some pointers what you should look out for. And I will also let you know which one I would buy with my own money, and my decision might surprise you, since it actually surprised me as well. So it seems we have a lot to talk about, let's get into it. Let's start with a little introduction of our contenders today, and let's kick things off with the Blade 16, the mother, or well, father of thinner than usual premium gaming laptops in its 2024 iteration. Betting on Intel's i9-14900HX, a 175 watts RTX 4090, a base config of 32 gigs of RAM with a 2TB SSD, and an absolutely gorgeous 240Hz G-Sync OLED, all wrapped in a matte black body that looks simply amazing as long as you do not touch it. And even in 2024, it is basically the gold standard when it comes to high-end gaming and content creation laptops. Lenovo has two aces up its sleeves with its very own flagship, the Legion 9, and the slightly lower tiered Legion Pro 7, but to be quite honest, this one is a proper beast in its own right and gives a lot of our other options today a run for their money. If you want something a little more exotic, we got the Alienware X16. As you know, I simply love their design, but the white beauty is a little handicapped from the get-go, since it is our only laptop today betting on a Meteor Lake CPU. Speaking of exotic or not quite mainstream, I also added the excellent XMG Neo 16 into the mix, and this barebone can be found under a few different brand names. Not only is this 16-incher one of the fastest notebooks in this form factor, or well, in general, but it also comes with an optional water cooler, allowing for a much quieter gaming experience than any of our other options today. Asus is pitching in with the ROG Strix Scar 16, a mini LED equipped gamer with the same flagship components inside an unfortunately very plasticky chassis. However, when it comes to actually using it, you should not underestimate this one. While you may argue that the ROG Zephyrus G16 might have been a better fit here, mostly because of its much more premium appearance and construction, I choose laptops that deliver not only in terms of looks, but also in terms of performance. And a 100 watts RTX 4090 simply does not cut it against the other monsters I have right here in front of me. Before we get to the inner workings of our flagship gamers today, let's start with the exteriors. I mean, if you spend that kind of money, you're not only buying the performance, but also investing in style. And right off the bat, I have to give it to the Razer and the Legion 9. Where the Razer is not only one of the most compact 16-inches with that kind of power, it is also arguably the sleekest, with super clean and subtle looks if you ignore the flashy green logo that is. The Legion is also quite subdued, albeit in a slightly different way, but if you want to, you can also light it up like a Christmas tree with a fair bit of RGB all around the chassis. In my opinion, it gets some extra style points for the unique carbon fiber look, and all in all, it just looks special, which you might appreciate if you spend that kind of money. The Alienware X16 is very much going in the same direction, even though its chassis design might be a bit more polarizing. I personally love it, but for some of you it might simply be too much, which I could understand. While it is one of the slimmest notebooks with full-powered high-end GPUs available right now, it is also one of the largest, which you should definitely keep in mind when shopping for this one. If subtlety is your thing, the XMG Neo 16 is your wolf in sheep's clothing. It looks almost dull compared to some of our other options, but it's cleanly designed with premium materials and some RGB bits around if you want to let the world know you are in fact a true gamer. The Legion Pro 7 goes in the same direction, but adds a few more visual cues hinting at its intended use case. The ROG Scar is basically the exact opposite, and its design just screams gaming laptop. Unfortunately, not really in a good way if you ask me. It's just a little too much, but again, this will of course boil down to personal taste. Regarding material selection and an overall premium feel, it is also the weakest of the bunch with a plastic body, albeit a sturdy one. If I were to rank them, the Alienware X16 would be next, followed by the Pro 7, and the Neo 16, the Blade 16 and the Legion, which would basically share first place. This doesn't mean the X16 or the Pro 7 are poorly made laptops, but the other three just take it a step further in my opinion. Regarding ports, you should not find too much to complain about here, but as with most things in life, the devil is in the details. While I personally really like the overall selection and placement on the Legion Pro 7, its 3 USB-As are of the slower 3.2 Gen 1 variety, which might be a bit of a bummer if you work with high-speed storage a lot. The higher-end Legion 9 trades one of the USB-As for USB-C of the same standard and adds a full-size SD card reader with very slow transfer rates, but bumps up the LAN connection to 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet, and both USB-Cs on the back are full Thunderbolt 4 ports. The XMG also shares its selection and layout with the Pro 7, but also adds a card reader, again with pretty average transfers at best. The Blade is doing much better in this regard, with the fastest reader of the bunch. And while you will have to make do without a network check, all USB-As are of the faster 3.2 Gen 2 variety, alongside a USB-C of the same standard and an additional Thunderbolt 4. The Scar, on the other hand, again shares the selection with the Blade, but adds the 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet back in. It comes with a less uneven layout, even though you might prefer USB-A and C on each side. The Alienware X16 is a bit special in our selection, having literally everything on the back. I like this a lot since it makes for a super clean setup, but your mileage may vary. Again, the selection offers no reason to complain, and it's also the only 16-incher to feature a dedicated mini display port, leaving both USB-C Thunderbolt 4s for peripherals. Its SD card reader can almost rival the Blade 16, but unfortunately it's only of the smaller and less practical microSD variety. The sleek 16-incher also offers the most limited maintenance and upgrade or repair options. And while the memory is the fastest in our comparison group today, it's also soldered, leaving you with only 2 NVMe slots for at least some form of upgradability. All of the remaining options also give you access to 2 SODIMMs, even though that is more theoretical on the Legion 9 since the flipped motherboard would require quite a bit of additional disassembly to expand the memory configuration. When it comes to inputs, it will most likely come down to personal preference, even though objectively the Blade 16 has the least amount of travel and this flat feel that takes some time to get used to. On the other hand, it has by far the biggest trackpad if that tickles your fancy. The Legion 9 and the Alienware sacrifice a lot of clickpad area for their keyboards, but subjectively these are my absolute favorites. Solid travel and a very clear pressure point make for a very satisfying typing experience here. And the Legion is especially amazing in this regard, since the absence of even the slightest flex in the keyboard area makes for a very precise feel. The Neo 16, Scar 16 and Legion Pro 7 are all way above average, with a clean layout and a solid feel for both work and play. In the display department, we actually encountered the biggest differences between our high-end contenders. Your decision here will depend on how much you're willing to spend on your visual experience and HDR eye candy. Both the Legion 9 and the Scar 16 come with mini LED displays. The Lenovo is betting on a higher overall resolution with a 165Hz refresh rate and the highest average brightness of all laptops today, while the ROG is treating you with a QHD+ 240Hz panel with the same above 1000 nits peak HDR brightness. The Scar's display would be my preferred choice, since it gives you much more control with switchable local dimming and pre-calibrated color profiles. These are a dream for a content creator and are unfortunately missing on the Legion. The Blade 16 is our only OLED option today, featuring the same resolution and refresh rate as the Scar. However, as is typical for the self-emitting display tech, you would have to sacrifice overall brightness for the most natural color and contrast rendition. If you do not care about HDR, the Legion Pro 7 offers a lot as well. Its still pretty bright IPS panel has stellar color gamut coverage, solid contrast and very accurate factory calibration. In my opinion, the X16 and the XMG Neo 16 are tied. While the XMG boasts the higher overall brightness, you only get complete sRGB coverage. The Alienware, on the other hand, offers more vibrant colors but barely acceptable brightness values for such a high-end machine. But let's finally talk about performance. On the CPU side, it is going to be especially interesting since most of our competitors bet on the same silicon, Intel's high-end flagship, the i9 14900HX. In our CPU rating, a collection of all sorts of tests, the XMG Neo 16 is sitting on top with quite a substantial lead, which is especially impressive considering we are mostly talking about the same CPU here. The Legion Pro 7 is quite close, though followed by the ROG Strix 16, while the Legion 9 falls even behind Razer's Blade 16 due to less than stellar single-core performance. Of course, the Alienware does not stand a chance since it is betting on a Meteor Lake CPU with fewer cores and much lower power levels. Of course, this does not mean that much in today's world of more GPU-bound games, but it is still something to look out for, especially if you want to achieve higher FPS in faster games, which asks for a lot more pure CPU grunt, or if you intend to use your shiny new notebook for certain workflows that would require a faster CPU. System performance shows all of our contenders relatively close to each other, and since we have also been able to test both the 4080 and 4090 SKU of the Legion Pro 7 and the Strix Scar 16, you can see how much of a difference Nvidia's mobile flagship can make in the end. Subjectively, all notebooks are more than fast enough for almost anything you can throw at them, and I also tried all of them for our videos, which was a very enjoyable experience on all laptops from a performance perspective. With this amount of computing horsepower in a mobile package, each of these makes for a great workstation if you also want to get stuff done. Looking at our synthetic GPU results, the Legion Pro 7 impressively shows that you should really ask yourself if you want to shell out for the 4090 config, since most of our contenders today are also available with a 4080. The difference here is measurable, but definitely not night and day. However, for some workflows, especially in video editing or basically anything that needs a lot of VRAM, you should still consider the difference between these cards here beyond just pure speed. Our gaming rating, a collection of newer and older games tested at 1080p to stress both the CPU and GPU equally, also shows that a fast CPU and maintained high power levels for both core components are almost more important than a beefier GPU itself, as demonstrated once more by the Pro 7. The XMG Neo 16 meanwhile, well, it's simply mopping the floor with its competitors here. That said, the differences between all of our contenders are again not earth-shattering except for the X16, which trails behind quite a bit, but that is to be expected given the overall weaker silicon. In Cyberpunk, a title that is much more GPU bound and therefore a lot more representative of modern games, our results are much more in line with the general expectations, especially if you go beyond 1080p. As you can see, even the slower CPU in the Alienware isn't asking for a huge compromise to actual FPS, as long as the GPU is fat enough wattage, which is actually quite impressive in the X16's slim chassis. The difference between Nvidia's high-end mobile GPUs is also much more noticeable here, and the Neo 16 shows very impressively what the 4090 can do under optimal circumstances. If you are interested in further results for any of the laptops we are dealing with today, please have a look in the description. I will link to both our detailed individual videos and the written articles on the website. Before we continue with our regular content, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. Together with Nvidia and our German retail partner NotebookcheckReviews, we are going to tell you how we utilize Team Green's latest 40 series GPU architecture and Nvidia's studio-validated laptops for our video production. We use DaVinci Resolve to edit our videos for the channel, and Blackmagic Software Suite just loves a fast dedicated GPU. In addition to the more traditional editing workflow, it also features a few AI tools that are actually useful and immensely accelerated by Nvidia's Tensor cores. In addition, their studio validation ensures that you get the complete package, with color-accurate displays, fast CPUs, a ton of RAM for some intense multitasking, and an overall capable computing companion for all of your content creation endeavors. Please follow the links below to learn more and head on over to NotebookcheckReviews' website to start shopping right away. And do not forget to check out the full video on the channel. But as always, there is more to pure performance figures than just FPS numbers, and when it comes to fan noise, you get almost the same experience from all 16 inches. According to our measured results, the Blade 16 is supposed to be the quietest machine, but that does not tell you the whole story here. While it may be a lot less noisy on paper, the fans emit a sort of high-pitched whine that I found quite a bit more distracting than the louder but lower sound emitted from the Legions or the Alienware, for example. Of course, we also recorded some more subjective samples for you at different power levels, so please sound off below which one you would pick based on fan noise alone. So that leaves us with battery life before we can finally wrap things up for today. Given the performance we are dealing with here, and considering that you can only access this performance when connected to power, it should not be the biggest surprise that you will not get all-day battery life from any of these laptops right here in front of me. That said, the Scar performs admirably, while the Alienware just disappoints, which is even more surprising considering it is supposed to have the most efficient CPU. But let's finally come to an end for today. When it comes to overall performance, we have but one outlier, the Alienware X16. And considering it cannot back up its lower scores with longer battery life, even though it does manage to be relatively quiet in its balanced mode, and keeping in mind the display situation, it's also one of the hardest laptops to recommend today. But to be quite honest, I still like it a lot. It's a fun to use if sometimes impractical laptop, but it speaks to me on a more emotional level, if that makes sense. And keeping in mind that Alienware puts it on sale very often, I would not completely disregard it if you are looking for a very special gaming laptop that has its quirks. If you are after the fastest gaming laptop across all sizes and can live with a solid if somewhat boring IPS display, then the XMG is your best friend. With stellar build quality and the optional water cooler and lots of tweaking potential, it's the perfect laptop for the speed enthusiast. The Legion 9 is a bit of a mixed bag for me. The overall feel and chassis quality is outstanding. I love the keyboard, it looks amazing, and the display is gorgeous for games. Performance is a bit hit or miss, if still quite good overall, but it's also very expensive, and given that the lower tier sibling is almost as fast or faster, well, you would really need to want that mini LED panel, which I could definitely understand. That leaves us with the Legion Pro 7, the Scar and the Blade 16, which would also be on my personal shortlist. The Legions are the workhorses for almost anything you can do with a notebook today. They are great for games and also excel for creators, and very much like the Alienware, Lenovo puts them on sale very frequently, so you can definitely get a very good deal for a very good notebook. The Blade will probably be the one that caters to creators the most, since you can offset the cost here if you make money from it. And with the combo of the stellar OLED display, solid I/O and still adequate if not class-leading performance, combined with subtle looks and a well-controlled noise profile, it's the perfect hybrid between a work and play laptop. And the Scar, well, if I would not look at it and just judge I/O, display, performance and fan noise, this would be my, and yes, I'm going to say it, perfect laptop. I enjoy the 240Hz OLEDs quite a bit, but recently grew a bit more fond of mini LEDs, especially the way Asus handles them, with the switchable local dimming, additional color profiles and the added brightness. The Scar is also relatively quiet in its balanced setting, and it's been a great experience using it for both games and our videos. But I am simply not sure if I could bring myself showing up to a meeting with this one, even though it's simply put a really good notebook. But please Asus, give us something like a Strix Pro or a Zephyrus Pro that keeps the same performance and chassis profile, just in a cleaner and higher quality package. So if you would put me on the spot right now, I would have to decide between these two. The Pro 7, even though I would really miss either the OLED or mini LED display, but it's just such a good overall notebook, or the Blade 16 for its sleeker appearance and smaller footprint. Or if I would just be at home, well, I really like the Scar. I can't help it. Thankfully, I do not have to decide, but please guys sound off in the comments below which one would be your favorite. I would love to hear your thoughts. That should also be it for today. Thanks a ton for watching. Do not forget to leave a like and sub on your way out, and I see you all in the next one. Take care.